If you enjoy Astronomy FM radio, please let us know with a small donation. We do rely on your support, and it's true. Every little bit counts.
AFM. You are listening to a universe of possibilities. This is Astronomy FM.
Coming up next, an Astronomy.fm original program. It's time for York Universe, a co-production of the Observatory of York University, Toronto, and the Voice of Astronomy. AFM
Hello and welcome to York Universe, the astronomy and astrophysics program written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, partnership with Astronomy.fm, the voice of astronomy. For any questions or comments you have about our past shows, or if you have any suggestions for future topics, please send us an email at observe@yorku.ca. You can always connect with us on the socials as well, on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at York Observatory, and on Facebook, it is Allan I. Carswell OBS. Our programs are free, but we won't say no to donations. If you should feel so inclined, head over to our website at observe.info.yorku.ca. We will be monitoring the chat room for questions, to post content. The current weather is looking good. But Elena, am I to understand it is not going to be live imaging tonight?
No, not tonight. It's a bit too cloudy, and we have a bit too few students to manage a live imaging for this evening. I do believe you will find Sergey, Nicole, and Maheen over on YouTube to chit-chat with you with lots of pretty pictures, but nothing live for this evening.
Well, summer is always little low staff-wise. What can we do?
Yeah, everybody seems to want to go on vacation. I'm not sure how that happened. But,
well,
you know, it's the shorter nights anyways.
Can't say that I blame people for wanting to take some time off in the summer. How have you been?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty busy. We're doing all kinds of testing on our new domes, as those of you who watched the special 500th episode last week might remember. Those cool sounds that we were playing to everybody, the high frequency sort of transmitter for the motors. It's all very, very space age and almost completely working. We're still doing that pesky electrical hookup, but it's been an amazing journey.
That's one way of putting it.
Yes.
So tantalizingly close, though.
Yes, as I was saying to someone else, it is the observatory is an amazing facility. It really is a blessing and a curse because you can do so much with it now. And we have actually successfully run our first fully computerized dome tests. And for those of you who don't know, it is actually kind of a big deal to have 6,000 pounds of dome doing what your computer says. So
that is totally a big deal.
It's literally.
Yeah.
And we
I
love it.
mean, back in my day, the
Back in
domes
we had the
baby
the
did.
hand crank, right? Wasn't that
Yeah, well, okay, it wasn't a hand crank. It was powered, but it did what the buttons told it to do. Sometimes, if the shoes engaged with the track,
Oh yeah, and
um,
the cracks and the pops and the leaks, all of those are gone and recycled. So gone and good riddance. But it did last quite a long time. We'll give props to our old domes. It was 50 some odd years they were up there, so they did an admirable job.
one might say they are history.
Actually, that's a good segue. So next year, when we're doing our This Week in History, we'll have a whole lot of a dome items for you all.
That's fantastic. But as we are not at next year, we are today. Why don't you take us away with our first item in space and astronomy history?
Yes, absolutely. So I couldn't resist going back in time to Apollo 11 because, of course, last week we had our special 500th episode. But it has happened again, a amazing Apollo 11 anniversary. So Apollo 11 was the space flight that first landed humans on the moon in 1969. And this one I actually have a special connection to personally, so I always feel very festive around this time of year. And for the connection for today, actually, this week in space and history, so on July 24th, in 1969, so 2:56 a.m. on July 22nd, Apollo 11 began its journey home, and it actually splashed down at 12:50 p.m. on July 24th, and it safely splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. And this Apollo 11 journey, of course, was cool in so many ways back in 1969, and this was the common mode of returning to Earth for quite a while. They had a module that would actually come in through the atmosphere. It has a heat shield to protect, hopefully, protect the astronauts inside, and they literally just drop through the atmosphere like a gigantic meteor. And they don't burn up because of the heat shield, but they would just drop down like a rock and splash into the ocean. And it worked, but this is super rough going, right? Like that is a tough way to come back to Earth. But it was the standard because that was really the only way we could reliably get people out of space back into Earth gravity. We just cushion them and hope for the best. And if you've watched some of the SpaceX returns, one of the cool things that's happening now is, of course, those controlled descent landings. So if you've ever seen the booster stages come back from SpaceX, they land out in the ocean, but they land in a controlled way with jets where they don't just fall into the ocean. They actually control their descent and they save them. And controlled descent becoming a thing now is really cool because now we can, all of this space flight stuff is starting to become what looks like possible. So around this time, I always like to think about, the original 1969 missions, and it's like, wow, I would love to go into space, but I wouldn't have liked to go that way because that was really, really tough. And it took, of course, quite a long time. This was all part of the original sort of moon landing journey, and it was sort of July 16th to the 24th was the sort of getting, and they landed on the moon on July 20th. They had a few days, I think a day or so on the surface. So they didn't actually get to go out onto the moon until the 21st. And of course, Armstrong was the first one to actually step onto the moon. And it's really cool as well because if you have some of the old newspapers at the time of the moon, one of the things they were worried about, because nobody had ever brought back moon dust, nobody had ever seen moon dust. We could look at the moon, but we had no idea what the surface was really like. And what they were worried about actually was, would the moon just be so slippery and fine dust that you like literally just couldn't stand up? You'd just be like ice skates. You'd just fall over all the time. That didn't happen. But yeah, I have a fun connection to this one because I actually was fortunate enough to get a hold of an issue of July 21st, 1969 Oregonian newspaper. So I have my own little special version of this event that it was actually recorded at the time by my great aunt, who was not in science at all. She just kept this newspaper in a box until I found it, and it was pretty awesome because it gives you kind of a little bit of a feel for what the unknown factor was in 1969, and is it going to be like an ice skating rink? Is it going to be a fine powder? And what kind of difficulty are we going to have walking? And of course, the moon rocks they brought back from this and subsequent missions have become quite a topic in and of themselves, being both very valuable and somehow both not sellable, but also occasionally for sale. So moon samples, are from this mission are still around. And of course, they had all kinds of fun little analysis of how they would walk, because they didn't know that they could walk, so they came up with that little hop that's become kind of like the famous low gravity hop, which is, I don't know, perpetually playing basketball, I guess, is kind of the idea. And of course, Michael Collins, who has been the unsung hero of the mission. And it's just, one of the things they did with this, of course, was also putting up the LRRR, which is LLRRR, not to be confused with a Triple R movie, but Ranging Retro Reflector. And that item on the moon actually still lets us determine the exact distance to the moon and actually how fast the moon is moving away from Earth, which is an ongoing experiment that we can do because of this device that was put down in 1969 by this same mission. And it is worth noting that one of the cost estimates that you'll find for this was $24 billion, but in 1969. So that was like an imaginary amount of money, right? It's kind of crazy to think about just what this investment was, at the time. That's still a lot of money, but in 1969, you could kind of see why there was a little pushback from people after this happened, because it was 1969.
And you spent how much to put a mirror on the moon?
Yeah, and it's like, okay, so we can measure the distance. What else can we do? They had solar wind experiments, but what were they doing directly is a little bit, you could see why some people might have had a bit of an issue with it, because it's like, what did this do for us again? This was how much money? So it's important to make that connection back to, why you're doing it and keep people involved so that, hopefully the next lunar explorations, we can keep interest and make them, more established. And if you really want some spicy hot takes, make sure to go back and read some of those old news coverages of Collins, because it is very clear why he never did interviews. They were not very nice to Michael Collins in 1969. So I'll leave this as a amazing shout out to the fact that they all got back, and that they in fact did, come back from Apollo 11 on July 24th, 1969, Michael Collins included. And it was an amazing time in history, but I hope it's also a little bit of our future to come.
Yeah, I find it interesting that we're, Splashdowns is where we started, and it's where we're going back, at least for a little while.
Yeah, it's unclear if the controlled descent will be fully implemented in the next generation NASA design, but there is a next generation SpaceX rocket that's not currently in use, that does have controlled descent for actually the human rocket, not just the stages.
Very cool.
So maybe that spaceship thing will happen someday. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Well, we are going from a splashdown, a return to Earth, to a launch. July 22nd, 1987 was the launch of the Soyuz TM-3. This was the third crewed flight to Space Station Mir, and it was a long-duration expedition, Mir EO2. The three-person crew included Alexander Alexandrov, who would replace the long-duration crew member Alexander Levakin, who had been diagnosed by doctors on the ground with minor heart issues and had to return home, and the two-man crew for a one-week-long Mir EP1 expedition, and those were Alexander Viktorenko and Mohammed Faris. Apparently, you needed to be named Alexander to be an astronaut or a cosmonaut in the 80s, or maybe that was just a coincidence. Not sure.
Some sort of selection effect.
Maybe. Mohammed Faris is from Syria, and he was flying as part of the Intercosmos program, which was a collaboration between Syria and the USSR. He was the first and so far only Syrian astronaut and the second Arab to go to space. Wow. He spent just over a week in space, and he's credited with carrying the first sample of soil from Earth into space, as he had a vial of soil from Damascus with him on the flight. He was awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, and he was also awarded the Order of Lenin. After his space flight, he returned to the Syrian Air Force, though what he really wanted to do was start a national space science center to help other Syrians become astronauts. In 2012, with the Syrian civil war, he defected from the al-Assad regime and fled Syria, and in 2017 was appointed the defense minister in the Syrian interim government, which is a self-appointed opposition grouping. He's no longer part of that, but he continues to live in Turkey, and has gotten his citizenship there, and he wishes to help that country with their burgeoning space program. So, an interesting character, an interesting person that I just learned about this week.
Well, and that all happened in 1987. So, I mean, addition favors no one, but he's got to be very old by now. So if he's still involved with setting up a space program in Turkey, that's quite an achievement to be doing that.
Yeah, he's in his 70s.
Very nice.
Early 70s.
Well, and this was actually one of the very, very successful missions in Muir. That's being on the third crewed flight. And Muir was an amazing success. So, I mean, it's interesting. They had this, quite advanced for the time space station. And for a long time, they were the only space station. So we went from sort of the first lunar landing to the first real established space station. It was quite sad when Muir had to come down.
Yeah.
I'm glad we have a new space station now. I hope they keep it forever.
Well, I'm glad we have a new space station as well. As for keeping it forever, yeah, it's questionable past 2024, but we'll see.
I just keep thinking, if you're going to get rid of it, why not put some solar sails on it and just fly it to Mars? It just seems like such a...
It's because the tech is wearing out, Elena.
I know. But I'm a big fan of, renovating old things, as you know, from the observatory.
Sure. I'm a big fan of renovating old things, too. I'm like, go circular economy. But the last place I want to be with out-of-date equipment
is in the space station on your way to Mars.
Away from Earth.
Well, no, that's assuming you've picked the closest approach, so.
Exactly. Minimum 6-month flight away from Earth.
Yeah, I think we'd definitely get in trouble as well if we tried to, get to Mars, because although Mars has lower gravity, landing on Mars is actually just as problematic as coming down onto Earth. And if you're not going to control your descent, you will actually just be a crater. So.
I think there are probably better plans for Mars habitats.
Yes, I certainly hope so. if there aren't, I'm not going.
Well, I wasn't going to go either way. I don't think my head can handle it.
Once they have showers and coffee, Mars will be totally fine.
Sure. Once it's as easy to get to Mars as it is to get to Europe, I'm in.
That's going to be a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't think it's in my lifetime. So
I think it will get as easy to get to Mars as it was to get to Europe in the 1800s. So if you go back in time and be like, I would be happy with a several months long sea voyage to I would be happy with a several month long space voyage, you're all good.
Oh no, I get too seasick. Next.
Yeah. Would you? Well, I haven't seen any conclusive studies on turbulence in space. So in theory, once you set your acceleration, you should have no turbulence,
probably
which would be
okay. Sure.
Yeah. Maybe. We'll leave it to the engineers.
If an opportunity comes up, I will consider it.
If not, we'll have to start pre-recording these because I'll be over there setting up the next observatory. All right, so before we get to Mars, maybe I should go somewhere else.
Sure, we'll go from colliding into a planet to colliding galaxies.
Yeah, I actually found this week in space science history. If you go back to 2016, one of my favorite papers had actually just come out, and I thought, we don't do this enough. Give a paper shout out for this week in space science history. But if you go to July 25th, 2016, and check the image for Astronomy Picture of the Day, you will find that in July 25th of 2016, it was Astronomy Picture of the Day was Deep Magellanic Clouds Indicate Collision. And it's a beautiful image of the large and small Magellanic Clouds, which are satellite galaxies to our own Milky Way. And the image is credited to Beletsky and Martinez Delgado. But the image actually comes from a paper which is by several authors: Besla, Martinez Delgado, Vandemarel, Beletsky, Siebert, Schafly, Gribble, and Nair. And it's a really nice paper from 2016, which actually kind of helped to uncover something that wasn't really viewable before. The Large and Small Magellanic Clouds, well, if you're in the southern hemisphere, they're visible to the naked eye, and it was pretty cool to go if you do get a chance to go below the south of the equator. I highly recommend it. Absolutely wonderful from Australia. And they do look like kind of these different than everything else little clouds in the sky. And it's, how bright they are depends on how dark your sky is. So they've been viewable to humans throughout our entire human history. But where did they really come from, and how did they evolve, and how have they interacted? And do we actually understand how galaxies form and interact? And the answer to that, of course, is always, well, not really, right? You can understand more or less of it. But this particular paper was pretty fun because it interposed basically an image of the Large and Small Magellanic Cloud. And they've made a monochrome color filter to highlight what they call our faint filaments. So this is parts that you would normally not be able to see, but it's faint little areas of gas and streams of stars. And streams of stars can be pulled off of anything that goes by something with high gravity. So if you have a cluster or a galaxy or anything that contains lots of objects going by something else with a high gravity, it will sort of pull on it. And as it pulls, it'll stretch it out, and so you'll get streams of stars. But it's really, really hard to see these because they're so dispersed and faint. And one of my favorite things is when people can see things that you couldn't ordinarily see. And so this was 2016. Which is a lot longer ago than I think it was. But it was using a low-cost telephoto lens, something that we could all do from a dark sky site, to actually look at stellar substructure. And this was one of the first times that relatively low-cost telescopes on a wide field were being used. And since we started using this, what we found is the whole Milky Way is way more complex than we like to think about it. If you start off describing the Milky Way, you go, okay, so if you look up in the sky and you see the Milky Way, that is, all of those stars that you can see are basically in this Milky Way. And our sun is one of those stars, and we can't really see the structure because we're inside it. But if we could go outside, it would kind of be like a giant fried egg. It's, kind of flat, and it's got a center area with a bit of a bulge. But there's so much more going on. There's structure in 3 dimensions. There are streams of stars wrapping up and around and sideways and going all the way out to the Large and Small Magellanic Clouds. And those 2 little clouds, they're outside of what we consider the main, if you will, fried egg of the Milky Way. But they still interact with its gravity, and they interact with each other. And so there's actually remnants that you can see in what's called a 2-mass. So data fans amongst you, if you any data scientists listening, feel free to dive into 2-mass. It's free. And it's an awesome all-sky survey that has been used for many, many things. One of them is helping to sort of untangle structure. And this paper was nice for me because I really love the idea of finding some of those hidden streams. So this is pretty fun. And that was all the way back in 2016, which was, like this is 2022 already? What happened to the time? So this is really fun. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, what happened to the time? There was this thing that ate up time for the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, it's gotten blurry enough to where I'm like, Okay, so I remember 2010, but so
Time no longer has any meaning.
the time distortion has traveled backwards from 2020 to encompass previous years before that.
Yes.
But anyways, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. If you love galaxy structure and uncovering things that you normally couldn't see, I very much recommend going back and checking out the astronomy picture of the day on July 25th, 2016.
That is cool. I would definitely be doing that. I love it when photos pull out extra stuff that is there, but you can't see with your eyes.
Yeah, it's totally there. It's just we wouldn't normally know unless we use, optics and settings that allow those features to become apparent. And that's one of the great things about astronomy is when we find a way to make something show up that normally it's unveiling that hidden universe. And I think we'll have time to talk about that a little bit later if we get to JWST.
Oh, well, we have to make it to JWST. Come on.
We can do it.
We can't go another week without talking about JWST.
we're already talking about hidden things in the universe, so we're almost there. All right, I'll stop distracting you. Go ahead.
All right. Before we get there, though, we're going to go visit the moon. So we started with the moon. We're going back to the moon. So July 31st, 1971 was the date that the first vehicle was driven on the moon by the Apollo 15 astronauts, David Scott and James Irwin. So this was the Lunar Roving Vehicle, the LRVs, and these greatly extended the range astronauts could explore once they landed on the moon. So there were 3 Apollo missions that had LRVs. So that was Apollo 15, 16, and 17. Apollo 18 would have had one, but that mission was canceled. So its LRV ended up being used for spare parts for the previous 3 missions. They were EVs, so a little ahead of their time, hey? And they could carry up to 490 kilograms, including 2 astronauts, equipment, and lunar samples. They were designed for a top speed of 13 kilometers per hour, but achieved 18 kilometers per hour during Apollo 17 mission, which kind of feels like the astronauts were like, let's see how fast this thing can go.
So isn't that about how fast those little scooters go now?
I have no idea. Maybe?
I'm going to say yes.
I know that I was looking at one of those little electric scooter thingos that can go 30 kilometers per hour.
Wow. Okay, so scooters can go even faster than
the moon buggy.
All right. Well, scooters are technically EVs as well, right?
Yes. Well, I don't know. It depends.
That's true.
Those are still gray areas when it comes to the Ontario law of the road. That's not what it's called. I can't remember what it's called. I usually know what it's called. Words are escaping me tonight. Anyways, so they were transported to the moon all folded up and in the lower part of the lunar module. And they were deployed from the lunar module with a system of pulleys and braked reels and ropes and cloth tapes. So the rover would be released by the first astronaut and slowly tilted out by the second astronaut on the ground through the use of the reels and tapes. And as the rover was let down from the bay, most of the deployment was automatic, and then once everything was unfolded and locked into place, and the electronics could be switched on, and then you could back away from the lunar module and go for a ride. And there's video, but it's kind of funny because you can't see you can hear the radio chatter. You can't see what the astronauts are doing, but later in the video you can see that they've kind of gone around and you can see them driving behind the lunar module, which is kind of funny. And the rover on Apollo 15 was used for a total of 3 hours and 2 minutes during that mission, covering a total distance of just under 28 kilometers. And its maximum range from the lunar module was 5 kilometers. They wanted to make sure they weren't too far away for the astronauts to be able to walk back in case they broke down.
Yeah, that is probably a good call.
Yes. They did go a little bit further on like later missions once they were like, okay, this thing has proven to be reliable. But this was the first one, so.
Well, and I'll say is one of the things, foldable electric transport did actually kind of start getting some strong interest in the 70s around this time. And it's just awesome that now we have the battery capacity to actually make it happen. So some of us can, dream about maybe one day getting one of those little scooters and doing even better. So yeah, foldable electric moon transport. Awesome.
Heck yeah. Sign me up, although maybe not on the moon. I'll take my EV on Earth.
That's probably safer, and I think it would be a lot less time consuming as well. The foldable aspect, I don't think that they would call foldable what you and I would call foldable.
Probably not. I'll just take a regular parking spot, please.
Or like fold once. That would be the ideal number of folds to have to do.
Although, yeah, you know what? You can really cut back on how much like area goes to parking if vehicles folded up when you aren't using them.
Well, there you go. NASA, call us. We gotta.
We might be on to something in the land use area. I'm just saying.
Probably not, but that's all right.
Well, I don't know. All right. Let's move on.
So yes, and I have a little astronomy aside. I don't know if you want to do your next one first, but I actually thought it would be very fun to do a This Week in History on the dog star.
Let's do it.
All right, should I go first?
Yes.
Okay. So how many of you out there in Toronto have noticed that it is very, very hot? It is Toronto, Ontario. We are having probably the hottest time of year. And if you've ever heard the phrase dog days or the dog days of summer, well, the dog days of summer are actually upon us. This is the 25th of July, and it's This Week in History, but it happens every year because for the last several thousand years, from roughly July 3rd to August 11th, this is called the dog days of summer. Usually in the northern hemisphere, they're the hottest and most unbearable, which definitely brings to mind yesterday, days of the year. And if you've heard about dog days but haven't really matched it up where it came from, have a look on your star charts, because actually this is an astronomy term. It actually comes from Canis Major. So dog, Canis, canine. So Canis Major has, of course, the star Sirius, or the dog star in it. And the dog star Sirius is currently following the sun through the sky. Almost exactly, not quite. It's a little bit offset from the sun, which means you certainly won't see it, but it is actually following the sun roughly. Sun rises a little bit before sunrise and sets a little bit before sunset. It's just got a slightly different arc across the sky. So the dog days of summer are literally the dog star, Sirius, following the sun across the sky. And it's next to the sun. It's really, really hot. In the summer, in the northern hemisphere, Sirius rises and sets with the sun. And in specific, on July 23rd, which was just 2 days ago, it's actually in conjunction with the sun. And of course, the sun is very, very hot, but the star Sirius is so bright, apparently, and this is maybe a little bit of hearsay or legends, there are some ancient tales saying that Sirius being close to the sun actually adds to the sun's warmth. Of course, this isn't actually why it's hot, but it is interesting. It is still in conjunction with the sun, and the phrase "dog days" actually does go back to ancient Roman, or Sirius the dog star, and this was and this is probably going to be very wrong pronunciation, Dies Canicularis, or Canicularis, sort of, dog days. So it does actually match up with what's going on in the sky. So I don't know if you can blame the unseasonable weather, but it actually is supposed to be unbearably hot right now. The dog days of summer have evolved over time, and various people picking up the language and running with it. It's sort of come to mean basically the 20 days before and the 20 days after the actual alignment of Sirius with the sun. So that has happened over time due to humans, but the alignment is, of course, still there. So this is the hottest stretch of summer, and it's not, let me just make this very clear, this is an astronomy show. The heat is not due to any added radiation from Sirius. Sirius is very far away, and it is not contributing any heat. It is, in fact, a direct result of Earth's tilt and the northern hemisphere being pointed towards the sun. We actually just had our summer solstice, and now we're in the hottest period. We've built up quite a lot of heat, and so now we have to work at starting to cool down. Of course, in the southern hemisphere, it is winter, and they are having a much cooler time of it. So keep in mind, it is in fact due to the tilt of Earth and not the position of Sirius. But it is interesting because it's got language evolution, history, ancient Romans, and the actual alignment of the star Sirius with the position of the sun. So happy dog days of summer, everyone. And there's your This Week in History for the last several thousand years.
That is cool. I knew it had something to do with Sirius, but I didn't know exactly what, and now I know. Thank you for my historical astronomy lesson of the day.
I love that kind of stuff because I'd heard about it before, and then I actually hadn't looked it up myself, and I was like, wait a minute, actually this totally goes together, and it's this week. So yeah, I mean, obviously don't look at the sun, but if you look at Stellarium or use a solar filter, and actually there's some good sunspots as well if you've got a solar filter.
Yes, solar filter, always, always, always proper protection if you're going to look at the sun.
Yes.
Sunglasses won't cut it. Won't cut it.
No, you need the special glasses, and they cannot have even like a pinhole in them. They have to be very good. Welder's goggles are basically.
Yep. All right, folks, you're listening to York Universe, broadcasting live from the Allan Carswell Observatory, located at York University in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. If you're not already there, go over to observatory.info.yorku.ca for chat, questions, content, etc. Once you're there, you'll be following the links to online public viewing for that. We are on Twitter, Instagram at York Universe, right? I think I've got two different things.
York Observatory. Yeah, and
Observatory.
Yeah, Instagram's changed to York U now because, of course, we had to replace our Instagram account due to unforeseen circumstances. But it's York Observatory, York U Observatory. or Allan Carswell Observatory. Those will all get US.
Cool, cool, cool. Look for some combination of that on whichever socials you're looking at. You'll find us. We're easy to find. There can't be more than one Allan Carswell Observatory.
Not yet.
Tonight you're listening to the Julie and Alana Show, and we're just wrapping up our this week in history. So we've got a couple of reminders. Why don't you do yours and then I'll do mine.
Amazing. Well, I'll just go ahead and remind everybody. We have a couple glitches on audio, but I think we're both still coming through okay. And I just want to remind everyone that we do have our regular Wednesday night broadcast. This week we will be on YouTube with a special guest speaker. So please do come along over to the YouTube channel. If you're on OPV, you're actually already there. And we'll have a special guest speaker starting at 7:30 p.m. So come along and learn all about all kinds of cool stuff. And we'll again be totally live. If it's clear, we will put on live imaging, I promise. And if you're on our observatory.info.yorku site, you can also hop over to the Astronomer in Residence program, where we have, and you guessed it, another astronomer in residence writing up all kinds of cool adventures. Parisa Nozari is out at Killarney Parks on behalf of the Allan Carswell Observatory and our Astronomer in Residence program, doing tours all this week. So you can follow along with her blog, or if you're actually camping up there, you can go along to the Killarney Parks Observatory. We've got lots of astrophotography, and it's a dark sky site. So we're talking about what you can do with small telescopes. Well, on a dark sky site, it is pretty awesome. So please go and check that out. And I think that's basically all the announcements for me.
Okay, cool. I just learned about this evening a space event that is happening soon. August 1st to 6th, it's called the Stardust Festival in Cochrane, Ontario. Do you know where Cochrane is?
I have no idea.
All right. For those who don't know, Cochrane is about, it's almost 800 kilometers north of Toronto. So you go north, then you keep going. You keep going some more. When you get to Timmins, you keep going another hour, and then you're in Cochrane. And from their website, it says the festival will focus on all age groups, on STEAM activities, on the importance of mental health awareness, mainstreaming Indigenous culture and knowledge systems in space research and exploration. The festival's programs include traditional drumming ceremonies, cultural and mental health workshops, inspirational keynotes, an exhibition, as well as many northern social events. And it includes Launch Canada Challenge, which is the first ever collegiate level Canadian rocketry competition from August 2nd to 4th. And that competition will be live streamed on YouTube. So if you're in the Cochrane area, cool event to go to. And a lot of the parts of this festival are free, and if you're not, then you can tune in to YouTube and check out this rocketry competition.
Very cool. Well, and rocketry in Cochrane, this has got to be a coincidence, but it's not named after the Zephyr Cochrane from Star Trek original series, inventor of warp drive.
Probably not.
Because having a rocketry competition in a place called Cochrane, I'm just saying, all the Star Trek fans, don't get confused. It's probably not probably not a convention. It's it's awesome that they've actually got a rocketry competition running here in Canada.
Yeah. I think it's also really awesome to have something like this in Northern Ontario, and to have, and it not just this melding of like space exploration, Indigenous culture, knowledge systems, like all this mix. If I were anywhere close to Cochrane, I would totally be going. but it's like an 8-hour drive. So
That's a long.
that's not going to
Well, if they end up inventing warp drive, I'm going. That's all I can say.
happen. But I might, check out the YouTube live stream, see what a collegiate level rocketry competition looks like. I just know that the rockets are really big. It's not like the little kit that you get at the science shop.
Those are cool too, but yes, proper rockets. Those are really, really fun. And if you do have a chance to go out there and watch actual rockets get set off, totally recommended.
All right. So we've got 2 news stories. We got 10 minutes. I think we can do it.
All right.
Take it away, Elena.
We'll go web first then. So some of you might have heard that the JWST telescope has, in fact, put out some absolutely amazing images. The first images released are not necessarily first light. We've seen a calibration image come out quite early on, and the images that they release as public images, they have actually quite a lot more available available as downloadable, but it's not been reduced and processed, so it doesn't look super, super pretty. The main first images which have been released are the Carina Nebula, Stephan's Quintet, Southern Ring Nebula, WASP 96b, and something called SMAX 0723, which is, of course, the famous image with all of the galaxies warping due to gravitational lensing. So each one of these images kind of showcases a little piece of the JWST, and it's really interesting to note that we are just at the very, very tip of the iceberg. And so a lot of the excitement that you'll have seen from scientists is not just about what's here, but what's coming and the vast unreduced data that has yet to be mined or yet to be released. So we could talk about all of these images, and I think it's worth going through them in case there is anyone who hasn't seen them yet. The details being shown by the JWST are not what you would see with your naked eye. And that's one of the things that makes them interesting, because they're at a wavelength that human eyes can't detect. And we should be used to this, but somehow it's still very, very strange every time it happens. So when we look at light, when we look at objects, we only see a part of the radiation because our eyes can only detect a certain range of light. But light exists at a huge, huge band. And we have radio waves, which we're used to picking up with radios. That's actually a form of light. We have X-rays that image our body, but that's actually a form of light. And so all of these different wavelengths contain different information about their sources, and of course can tell us, if it's an astronomical object, specific things about it. So the JWST telescope having this infrared ability means that it looks at something in a little bit of a different way. It has a tendency to look through dust and gas. So dust and gas block optical light, but infrared can oftentimes travel through it. And so you see light being emitted through the dust. It no longer blocks your view. So things like the Southern Ring Nebula, which was captured by both Hubble and JWST, in the JWST image, you can see a huge amount of detail around the ring in sort of the layers of beautiful sort of almost like petals on a flower of wrapping around the ring nebula in this extra gas detail. So you get to see things that were previously unseeable, which, as you could guess from my earlier article, I absolutely love. So the first image that was kind of unveiled as well was a deep space, deep field image. So they watched for several hours at a small piece of the sky. And of course they had, huge amounts of detail and galaxies being picked out in this image. The SMACS 0723 galaxy cluster captured by Hubble was another absolutely wonderful one because it was captured by Hubble. You could see there was a little bit of gravitational lensing, and then in the JWST image we could see a huge amount of extra detail, and that's basically across the board. So when we look at Stephan's quintet, which is a famous cluster of interacting galaxies, in the JWST image, you can see so much more of the interacting gas because of that infrared wavelengths. And they even caught a little picture of Jupiter. I don't know if everyone's seen that one. It wasn't quite as much fanfare as some of the other ones, but being able to accurately image the bands and the moons of Jupiter from the JWST location, rather than needing a satellite, is actually pretty awesome as well. So imaging planets, and we are hugely, I mean, I don't know if we're going to be able to get to Neptune, but the hugely under-imaged outer solar system planets of our own solar system are also going to benefit, we hope, from the JWST images. And there's so much to talk about in every single one of these images. We're probably not going to be able to get anywhere near close to it. So I'll recommend everybody hop over and go on to the first images from JWST site. Have a look at the Carina Nebula. The detail on the gas and dust in that star-forming region is absolutely amazing. The image has been nicknamed the Cosmic Cliffs. It looks almost three-dimensional. It's a huge gaseous cavity. You have peaks that are light years high, and it's a lovely, lovely image. Of course, the WASP 96b is the one I haven't mentioned yet, and it's not particular an image, but it's a they actually had a distinct signature, which they took, and I believe this was one of the alternate instruments, but this was NIRISS, so NIRISS. And it's a spectrograph. It's a single object slitless spectrograph, and they took a spectra looking for what elements were present in an actual planet that is not orbiting the sun, so an extrasolar planet. This was WASP 96b, hundreds of light years away, and we are actually able to make a detection of water, actual H2O, solid detection in a planet that is not orbiting our sun. And this is absolutely game-changing, although I have to say the image on it is a little bit less impressive if you don't know a bit of astronomy. So it's amazing, and if you love spectra, please go and check that one out as well. And of course, we have to say that as well, they also have possibly uncovered the new furthest highest redshift galaxy. That one still needs to be confirmed, but if it's true, it will give an estimate of the farthest or the earliest galaxy that has yet to be identified in the universe, which is, it's all amazing. So we are well and truly into this next generation, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
Yes. Thank you. That was awesome. All right. I just want to sneak this one last thing in, and that it is that Artemis 1 potential launch dates have been announced. They were announced on the 20th, and they are for late August, early September, so that's soon. So August 29th, September 2nd, September 5th, those are the potential launch dates for the return to the moon.
Oh my
Artemis
gosh.
1. I know, right? I can't believe it's here.
They're still actually doing it in August. That's amazing.
Well, I mean, if preparations continue as planned. So this is an uncrewed mission. The Orion spacecraft will be going out to the moon, orbiting and coming back. But fingers crossed. And then, of course, splashing down off the coast of San Diego. All right, everyone. Managed to sneak it in. You have been listening to York Universe, the astronomy and physics program written and presented by the students, faculty, alumni, and friends of York University. Your hosts this evening have been Julie and Elena. Please stay tuned because it's Astronomy/Science Night in Canada. Coming up next is Quirks and Quarks, Western Worlds, and Science for the People. You can always find us on the socials and at observatory.info.yorku.ca. Thank you for tuning in, and clear skies. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
You may find more of our AFM original programs on our website. It's really easy to find us. We are astronomy.fm. You may also find us in the iTunes radio listings near the top of the News Talk section, and also as an iTunes podcast selection. We'd love to hear your comments. Please email us at radio@astronomy.fm. Thanks so much for being part of the voice of astronomy around the world and across the known universe. This is Astronomy.fm Radio.